Right on time, just how we like it.
Yep, right on time.
According to the stove, which might be slightly slow, but
something high.
A little hay chaff.
Something. Anyways.
Yeah. So welcome everybody to episode 35 of Chewing the Cud. This is a weekly live stream where we sit down at the kitchen table and discuss things related and unrelated to regenerative agriculture. We usually start off with some introductions for those who are new to the stream, and tell a little bit about who we are and why we're doing this. And then we transition into a topic for the week. This week's topic is appropriate stocking, what that even means, how to be appropriately stocked, how to approach that. We'll sort of cover that from as many angles as we can. It's a pretty nuanced and multifaceted topic, so I'm sure we'll have a lot to discuss and a lot of good questions as a result, which brings us to the final piece of this whole session, which is we'll talk about appropriate stocking, and then it's just free for all. You guys ask us anything, questions, comments, concerns. They don't have to be related to anything we're talking about. You guys just steer the rest of the session after that. And as always, throw the comments and questions in the chat, and we'll answer everybody unless it's crazy over the course of the stream. So, yeah, let's just hit some introductions and then get on with it.
I'm Isaac Tappenden. This is Ben Hawley. We're interns here at Green Pastures Farm with Greg Judy. Greg Judy has a YouTube channel. Go follow Greg's YouTube, and you can get a glimpse of what we do on a daily basis.
Or follow On the Graze, which is what you're on right now, or Isaac Tappenden on Instagram.
Isaac Tappenden.
And for those who are unaware, this will also be posted on YouTube. Some people might be watching right now on YouTube, but it won't be live on YouTube. But after the fact, I clip it up.
I gotta turn this down.
And I send it over to YouTube with useful clips from the episode as well as the full episode. So if the stream is really choppy, usually the file is pretty clean, so you can watch the whole thing in crispy 1080p.
Yeah. Greg's YouTube, Ben's Instagram, my Instagram, and Ben's YouTube.
Yeah.
Which is
it's just my name.
Yeah.
And if you look up like Chewing the Cud or On the Graze or whatever, like it'll also show up. It's got enough traffic at this point that it's easier to find.
Yeah.
So what else?
We run South Pole cattle, roughly 370 head. Oh crap!
Sorry.
St. Croix sired hair sheep. Guard dogs. We sell bale rollers. We grow shiitake mushrooms. We host grazing schools, farm tours. Sell fiberglass posts. There's a lot that we do here on the farm, and so Ben and I are here, learning what we can, loving what we're doing, and increasing our toolkit.
Exactly.
Put more tools in our tool belt.
And bringing all of you on for the journey of what we're learning, and we love sort of like going back and forth and discussing it. And by no means do we have everything figured out. Like that's what we really like about these streams is that people start asking questions that we haven't even thought about, and then it gets us thinking, and we start talking to Greg about certain things, and so it's awesome. It's sort of like a little
the community.
The community. Getting it done.
Chewing the Cud community.
Chewing the Cud community.
Let's go.
Going strong. 35 episodes, roughly 35 weeks. It's pretty insane.
We've been doing it for a while.
We're coming up on a year. But anyway, enough chit chat. We'll get into the topic for the week. The topic for the week is appropriate stocking. So I guess like the first thing to sort of like get out of the way is like what is stocking rate, and then what is stocking density, because those two terms get thrown around in the livestock management world a lot. So we can sort of clear the air with that first, and then we'll sort of go into a little bit more detail, I guess.
Yeah. So stocking rate is the rate of animals to acres that you have on your farm. So for example, let's say there's 700 acres that you're running on, and you have 350 head of cows. You're stocked at, it'd be 2 acres per animal or per cow, which per
roughly
head.
Yeah.
Let's say you had.
Well, let's make it easy. Let's make it easy. Yeah.
500 acres, and you had 100 animal units, so 1,000-pound animal equivalents, whether that's cows, bulls, calves, whatever.
We can get into that in a second, but yeah.
And so you're stocked at 5 acres per one animal unit.
Yep.
That's your stocking rate. Stocking density, on the other hand, let's say you're doing twice a day moves, or let's just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Single day moves. You've put your 100 head on 4 acres, and the 100 animal units, which is 100,000
pounds. Yeah.
100,000 pounds on 4 acres. So divided the 100,000 pounds by 4 acres, you're stocked at 25,000 pounds per acre. That's the stocking density.
Yep.
Where just don't get the stocking rate and density confused, and it's easy to confuse. It's
yep,
they're
absolutely,
so similar.
Absolutely.
But
And you just talked about it, but I'll clarify even further for people who don't understand. Animal units is a way of like standardizing, because everybody knows like a big 1,500 pound cow is different from a 600 pound steer, is different from a 100 pound sheep, is different from 125 pound goat, is different from like on and on and on. Like they're like
2,000 pound water buffalo.
Yeah, so like how do you equate all these different livestock when you're talking about stocking rate or stocking density on your farm? And one of the ways to do it that I think it makes pretty intuitive sense is to just treat everything in animal units, which is based on one animal unit is 1,000 pound cow, like
live weight.
Live
it's like
weight.
1,000 pounds of live animal weight is
So
one animal unit.
So like one 1,000 pound cow would be one animal unit. One 1,500 pound cow would be a 1.5 animal unit.
2 500 pound steers would be one animal unit.
And it takes roughly, there's some debate as far as the sheep are concerned because of lambs and like that kind of thing, but roughly 5 ewes per animal unit. So for every one animal unit, you can run one 1,000 pound cow or 5 sheep. Roughly. But anyway, so animal units, stocking rate is your entire farm, like over the course of the year.
The stocking rate doesn't really change,
No.
like day to day. Like it's like if you're doing it right, it should be a continual progression with what your like carrying capacity is on your land. If your land is improving due to your management, your stocking rate should be able to be increasing over years. Whereas like the stocking density
varies dramatically.
Each paddock move, you could have different density, and like the density and time is like there's a real like delicate balance between the two. Where like you can have super high density, like 1,000,000 pounds to the acre, which you're tightening your herd down that much, but you only want to leave them there for 30 minutes. Whereas, say you're leaving them there for a day, maybe you want to be more at like 20,000 pounds an acre or 40,000 pounds per acre of density. So there's like pretty much the tighter you put them, the quicker you want to be moving them.
Otherwise, they overgraze. Because that's really the big thing is like, we want to avoid overgrazing, right, as grass-based managers. And so there's a couple different ways that you end up overgrazing, right? The stocking rate is the first thing you should look at as far as like if you're going to be potentially overgrazing your operation. And the stocking rate you can get, like the NRCS will put out a average stocking rate for your county or your area. And that's always a good rule of thumb. Like when you're starting out and you're not entirely sure as far as like what is normal like in your area, you can always go off of that number because it's quite conservative. If you're rotationally grazing it by any means, your stocking rate's probably going to be higher than the county average, but it'll be a really safe place to start if you start around that whatever. I think
because they base it off of everything in the county. Everybody that's running cattle, what are they stocked at? That's the average rate they're figuring. And a lot of people in your county were probably continuously grazing, so they can't be stocked as heavy because they're not moving them. Whereas when like you said, when you're moving them, you're hopefully able to increasing the recovery and increasing the amount of forage you're growing. Therefore, you have a better stocking rate, or you can have more animals on your land.
So starting out, like taking that stocking rate for your county that you get from the your NRCS or whatever organization, and starting around there, and then evaluating, wow, I have way too much grass that's getting away from me, or I have too many animals, which probably won't happen if you're going that conservative in the beginning. But stocking rate's the first thing to look at. If you have too many animals just on your farm in general, it doesn't matter how tight or how small or less dense or more dense you're going to be able to make that your rotations or whatever, you're just going to run out of grass.
So if your stocking rate is incorrect, you're never going to get your stocking density is never going to fix that problem.
Nope.
You have to look at the stocking rate first,
Yep.
like you were saying.
That's the first thing to look at. And then your stocking density is like, once you know that your stocking rate is appropriate, when you're looking at your stocking density, that's like your everyday moves or every 2-day moves or whatever you're doing, evaluating the forage residual after each move, right? And so, and it varies, like depending on the time of year, depending on the drought, like that drought or no drought. It's one of those things where like sometimes you want to, I mean, as a general rule of thumb, we like to leave a good amount of residual, like, just grazing the top third of the plant for the most part. But there's sometimes that we'll hammer the grass down.
Especially in the wintertime when we're trying to get as much stockpile as we can.
And so you just adjust your stocking density to get the desired amount of residual in each paddock. And that's something that's very plastic, as in like you can manipulate that like very readily depending on what you're seeing. And so when people always ask like Greg or us or whatever, like how big a paddock should I be giving my animals? There are so many pieces to that question. And the first big piece is like, where are you located, right? And the second big piece is how many animals do you have? And then like, what time of year is it? Like what kind of conditions are you in? Like that kind of stuff is going to all dictate how big or small
what's your forage look like.
But the simplest answer that you could give somebody when it's like, how big a paddock should I give them? Just try something and see what happens. And then when you move them to the next paddock, look at what was in that paddock. If it's like, wow, that's way too short, give them a bigger area. If it's like, wow, there's a ton of grass left over, give them a smaller area. And you're going to figure it out pretty quickly, like what that sweet spot is for your individual
You're going to develop a grazing eye. So you're going to be able to look at a piece of grass. And like different times of the year, sometimes we have, 18 inches of grass out there. Sometimes we have, 12 inches of grass or whatever. Like just depending on the season, depending on the conditions. Every single piece of land is not going to have the same amount of forage at all times in the year. So like we're constantly adjusting the size of the paddocks that we're making, and so it's never like there's never a cookie cutter answer with it, is what it really boils down to.
Yep.
It's all context dependent.
Yeah.
So
but at the end of the day, like if you're moving your animals at all, right? Even if you divided your farm into 4 quadrants and you're just rotating your animals around, you are going to be growing more grass than somebody who's just giving the animals the entire farm at a set stocked situation. So it's like we always, and Greg always harps on, like making sure that you're really concentrating on animal performance and really concentrating on leaving enough residual, and you don't want to graze it too short. You want to be just grazing the tips, and you got to move them fast in the spring and slow in the summer, and there's like all these moving pieces, and it gets overwhelming for a lot of people. But the most important thing to remember is like the cattle are quite forgiving. Like you're not going to kill anything by giving them too small or too big of an area
for a day,
even several days,
yeah.
Like a long time. You could screw up for a long time, and the cattle performance probably will suffer, but it's not like you're going to kill anything. And so you just need to like take a deep breath and be like, okay, let me just try it and see just be observant and watch what's happening, right? And so like at the end of the day, if you're just rotating and not paying attention and not adjusting your paddock sizes at all, you're going to be better off than somebody who's set stocked. But if you're adjusting your paddock sizes and manipulating your stocking density, in the paddock with the conditions,
and you're stocked at the right,
and your overall stocking rate is correct, you're going to grow even more grass than somebody who's just rotating in 4 quadrants without, just cookie cutter, not paying attention to any sort of environmental conditions. So there's just layers of complexity to the whole thing. And the more complex and nuanced you can make it, the more you're going to align with the complexity and nuanced nature of the ecosystem that you're operating in. And the more you can level those two things together where your complexity is matching the complexity of what's around you, like that's when you just have it just running like a top. And everything starts to go well. Your animal performance increases, your grass health, healthy your soil, healthy your water system, healthy your greater ecosystem, all that just starts to, go crazy in a good way.
Yeah. So I was thinking about stocking density. So
I'm going to go turn the oven on.
Yeah. With stocking density, the more the more density you can get on an area, the better the land's going to respond, the better impact you're going to get, the better growth you're going to get on the recovery side of things. That being said, it's a delicate game, and I think a huge problem in like this, mob grazing or rotational grazing, people get in this mindset, oh, well, if I get these cattle packed in real tight and I make them take it down and, I'm moving them, they're still doing good. You really, I need to stress this, you really need to be focusing on animal performance in that respect. Yes, taking it down, absolutely hammering it, beating it up, nothing left, making the cattle eat everything. As long as you're getting a rain too, that's not effective.
And a long enough recovery period.
And a long enough recovery period. That's going to come back awesome because you had a lot of stocking density. But your cattle, by making them do that, you're really pushing your cattle. And in the long run, that's going to really come back and bite you. So, stocking density is awesome as long as you're moving them quick enough. Like this summer, we had the cocklebur field. There was a big rain and we had left the cattle in this bottom and they had mudded it, to a soup. And so
it was like a 4-inch rain.
Yeah,
it was an abnormal occurrence. Yeah.
And so nothing was growing in that spot. It was just like mud. And so the only thing that grew back was cockleburs. Cockleburs, I don't know if you're not familiar, they're burrs that are really prevalent in like crop fields, and since this bottom was located right next to a creek, a lot of seeds from the crop fields came, and they're planted in that bottom. And so these cockleburs came up, and we had, they were, 6 foot tall.
Yeah, some
in some
of them were
spots,
like 6 feet tall.
and just gnarly things. They put out a burr that has a bunch of spikes on them.
And
it's like a seed pod, pretty much. Yeah,
it's like animal dispersal seed mechanism.
It sticks to their hair coats and everything. And so what we did is we split it up into, there's like probably an acre section.
Yeah, it was probably
about an acre that we had done this, that got mudded and had the cockleburs. And so we divided that acre into 3. And one morning we sent the whole mob into one of the a third of an acre or whatever, 370 head, 264 animal units, roughly.
Yeah.
And they were in there, and we were just, letting them mill around. They had enough room to just barely walk around the paddock without touching hot wire, but they were seriously trampling some of those cockleburs on the ground. And then we waited until it looked like they had trampled enough and there wasn't anything left eaten there. It was about 30 minutes, and we moved into the next piece. And we did that for 3 times. And we were at million pounds to the acre stocking density, but we were only there for half an hour.
Someone can do the math. If it's 265 animal units in a third of an acre, you could do the math and figure out what the stocking density was. But anyway.
Yeah, and so in that respect, if you can get that density and move them that quick, you're going to do really good for animal performance, and you're going to do really good on your recovery or your animal impact too. If you were stocked at that density, if we decided, we're just going to leave them there all day at 1 million pounds to the acre.
A, they probably would get out. In fact, they would
definitely
almost certainly get out.
B, they would have to be eaten. They'd eat everything down to the dirt and then start, reaching their necks underneath the water. They do that before they get it down to the dirt. They'd be reaching their necks, and everything that they could reach underneath the fence without getting shocked, they'd have that all chewed off to the ground, and it would just be awful for the cattle, awful for the land. But since we were still stocked at that 1 million pounds per acre, but we were just moving them quick. That's the key, is the time they're there.
And the goal really wasn't for them to eat the cockleburs.
Yeah.
Because there's almost no feed value in a mature or mostly mature cocklebur. They'll sometimes eat them when they're really tender, but it's not something that they seek out. They smell like cat piss. They don't smell good at all.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the point was just to stomp them and break those stems in that sap flow to just kill the cockleburs without us having to go in there and mechanically get rid of all of them. Even though I think Greg went in afterwards and knocked the ones off.
I posted a I posted a post about it where I had a before, during, and after picture of the cocklebur. Same spot. It's kind of cool to see the difference that they made.
Yeah.
It was like in July or something. So if you want to scroll back and look at that.
So like but like you were saying, if you were able to move them at that quickly on a third of an acre with that density, and you had good quality forage in that area, like you'd be really just like topping up their, like basically like right when they're about to like lay down and ruminate, you'd end up moving them again, and so you're just constantly keeping them full, which will put on a lot of weight. Which is a good thing. They'll gain a lot of weight. But in that particular scenario, like there's not enough food in there. So like even if like we were pushing them, and after those 3 moves over 30 minutes or whatever we were spending in each one, we let them out into, I don't know how many acres that paddock was.
Like 6 acres.
Yeah, like a 6 acre paddock of nice grass, legume, just general pasture mix out there. And they got to graze that for the rest of that day, and sort of like recover from being forced to like walk around in a circle for a couple hours in the morning. They were so annoyed. Put it like
they know when
we're screwing with them.
It's not like we're screwing with them, but we're like making them work a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're not happy to do that. But it's a good tool to have. You need to. Yeah. If you can utilize things like that, not only are you gonna like if you had to just brush hog it, which we ended up brush hogging anyways, just because we didn't get them all knocked down. But if you didn't have a brush hog and you're able to do that, you just saved a lot of cost there, and you're positively impacting that negative situation.
The other thing also to consider with this whole stocking density, stocking rate thing is species. Like species play a big role in what you can run, right?
George said 780,000
pounds to the acre. Yeah.
It's about a
little over 3/4 of a million pounds. The other thing to consider is like species when it comes to stocking rate and stocking density. So like sheep, for example, we touched on it earlier, but you can run a lot more sheep per acre than you can cows because they're a lot smaller. And so if you're in an area that has either a really low stocking rate because it's incredibly dry, right? Or you're somewhere where you don't have a ton of acreage, even though you've got like a decently high stocking rate because you have a good amount of moisture throughout the year. Like sheep are such a good option because you have so many more animals like in there, like relative to if you were running cattle.
So what he's saying, let's say you had 10 acres and your stocking rate for the county was for 3 acres per cow or per animal unit. With that, or let's make it more simple.
Let's make it easy. Yeah.
Let's say it was 5 acres per animal unit. 5 acres per animal unit is the stocking rate. So you could run on the 10 acres, you could run either 2 cows or you could run 10 sheep.
10 sheep because 10 ewes. And it's like your 10 ewes are gonna I mean you could do the math out, but like your 10 ewes most likely like are gonna make you a lot more money a lot faster than 2 cows. Than 2 cows. Yep. So it's like it's like those things you also can consider. You know what I mean? And then you could sort of break it down even further about like cow size, right? Which is something that Greg harps on a lot, and it all comes back to this stocking rate, stocking density thing, where if you have 2 1,500-pound cows, right? That's 3,000 pounds.
Or 3 animal.
Or 3 animal units, right? If you have 3 1,000-pound cows, that's 3,000 pounds or 3 animal units. But
it's 3 cows.
Yeah, it's 3 cows. So say you're raising the 3 cows and I'm raising the 2 big monsters. Let's just pretend everything's equal and like my pasture is not going to get all pugged to crap and like it probably will. But like let's just keep everything else equal, right? Say they
same amount of forage.
Same amount of forage. They perform on the same amount of forage, which is also not true, but they perform on the same amount of forage, right?
They all give a calf.
They all give a calf, right? So I would get 2 calves every year because I've got 2 animals, for making up that 3,000 animal units. You have 3 animals making up that 3,000 animal units, so you get an extra calf every year. And so, like, just simple math like that, 3 calves is a lot more money than 2 calves.
And
so
you might say, well, no, these 2 calves will be bigger than the 3 calves when you wean them. And that's true. And if you know the cattle market, if you're relying on the cattle market, and you know
as
the
in
cattle
like
market,
you're selling to the sale barn. Yeah.
Sale barn. The smaller the animal, the more per pound you get for the animal, because it's a longer time before, when they buy that animal, they have a longer time before they finish it, so they can put a lot more grain in it, and then they can make a lot more profit.
It's really counterintuitive.
Yeah,
so
it doesn't make sense.
I'll say it again, but it's like if you have a smaller calf and you bring them into the sale barn, you will make more money
per pound
than somebody who brings a larger calf into the sale barn of the same age.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and like you were saying, the reason is that smaller calf, there's a longer time to finish it than that larger calf. And
so yes, maybe per calf you're making more for the bigger animal because you've got more pounds, and it's maybe, even though it's a little bit less money, you're still making more.
Yeah.
But you've got 3 calves as opposed to 2. So the weight there, and those 3 the 3 calves, their mamas are 1,000 pounds, so they're putting more. They don't take as much feed.
I mean, there's a lot of other positives, but like everything being equal, it's still advantageous to have like smaller framed animals. And then that's not counting the fact like feed efficiency and like destruction of pasture when it gets wet. Fertility. Every
100 pounds over 1,000 pound animal or cow, you lose, I think it's 2% fertility. So those 1,500 pound cows, they are
500 pounds over 1,000.
So
10%
less fertile than the 1,000 pound cows.
All things being equal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now more food for thought. But anyway, I think that sort of covers the discussion about like stocking rate versus stocking density and sort of like things to think about. If people have got questions about it, throw it into the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. We're just going to, now is the time to just start throwing them out. Anything. It can be related to stocking density or stocking rate. It can be completely unrelated. What we had for dinner tonight, like
chili.
We had chili.
You can't ask us that now.
Yeah, that's true. That kind of stuff. So why I turned the oven on, that's also another good fun fact. So anyway, just throw stuff in there and we'll do our best to answer it.
Girl walks with goats says, yep, two times on the sheep to land versus cows. I think she's talking about profit. You get twice as much profit on the land as sheep to cattle. Her sheep are smaller, and last fall it took her 2 months to graze across a 4.5 acre field. 1 a day, 2 and 3 day moves based on the paddock size. So that's the thing. Like we were talking about with sheep.
Yep.
You can just run them on a lot less land and a lot less forage, and since they're smaller animals and they take less forage, they take the winter better.
Yep.
They can take that heat. Like if it does, they take that
Yeah.
cold. And if it does get really cold, and they only have to eat a little bit more forage, whereas a cow would, if it has to keep its body heat up, they'd have to eat a lot more forage to keep warm.
Yeah. It's something else to think about. If you're thinking about sheep, we did a couple live streams ago where the topic was starting sheep enterprise. So there's videos out on YouTube about it. There's the live stream is in my IGTV stuff on the Instagram. We did a whole discussion about that. I mean, you're more than welcome to ask questions, but if you want more information and like more detailed discussion about us rambling about sheep, go check that one out.
Yes. Massey 1707 says Kit Farrow talks a lot about profit per cow as opposed to profit per acre on the cattle, and that's important. If your cow is going to be, if you're relying on your cattle to make a living, each cow has a job in that herd, and that's to make you a profit. And the more profit she gives you, the better she's gonna do for you.
I don't know. I mean, I think it makes sense.
I think
profit per acre also.
I think profit per cow is important, but like you said, profit per acre is even more important, and it's kind of along the same lines. It's like focusing on what is going to make you, with what you got, make you the most money. So it's kind of the same. Yeah. And I think if you're focusing on profit per cow, you're gonna be focused also on profit per acre.
Sort of though, because this is an interesting discussion. Though, because if you have larger animals, your profit, like we were just talking about, with a larger calf, your profit per animal is going to be higher than your profit per animal.
That's
if
true.
if you have smaller framed animals, but your profit per acre with smaller framed animals is going to be higher. Are people sort of following what I'm saying?
But then there's also the factor that it takes more feed to get that animal bigger. So maybe the margin is actually probably less.
It would be an interesting thing to like dig into. But that would be an interesting discussion to have, because
it'd be something to think about.
Because I feel like
to think about it
I feel like profit per acre is something that you should be paying more attention to than profit per cow. I feel like that's a trap in some ways.
Or it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think whether you want to focus on. I mean, I know you really need to focus on profit per acre. Like that's because that's what you've got available to you. What can you make?
Yeah.
How can you make a profit with what you've got? Not necessarily like the cattle you have, because the cattle are going to fit the acreage
that you've got, which is sort of going back to some discussions we had earlier about like understanding your land, understanding your ecosystem, understanding your market, understanding what's going to fit in there, and that's all tied into like profit per acre. If running purple goats is going to be a lot more profitable for your specific situation compared to running black Angus cattle, like you should run purple goats. You know what I mean? Like all things being equal. So, yeah.
Oh, he said he screwed it up. It's profit per acre.
That's what
I was thinking. That it didn't sound.
I don't want to. I mean, Kit Farrow knows what he's doing, so I didn't want to
step on anybody's
toes. But it didn't make a lot of sense in my head.
Like, wait a second. If you're focusing on profit per acre, you could get the bigger you get,
the better it would
or
be.
the profit per cow.
Yeah, I think it's a trap. Yeah, it is a trap. Focus on profit per acre. Yeah,
that's
not
funny.
Profit per cow.
That was good though. You got to think about it
for a second.
And talk about it.
Yeah.
What kind of tea are you drinking, Ben?
It's chamomile tea. I can't drink anything.
It's
whole flower chamomile.
Yeah.
Highly recommend.
You've been getting into this.
The tea game.
The tea kick, it's not kick. It's
an obsession.
It's an obsession.
Yeah, it's an obsession. True tea.
Yeah.
No, but like the chamomile stuff. If people really like, this is a total tangent, but if people really like chamomile tea, like in the tea bags or whatever, I'd highly suggest going onto Amazon or trying to find some local stuff. One of my friends actually found like local whole flower chamomile tea. It is a totally different experience. Like it tastes so much better, and the effect, like like the drowsy, like relaxed sort of like effect that you get from chamomile tea usually is a lot higher. Fun fact:
if
you see me zone out, it's because of this. But this is a really funny like Easter egg for people who are super into this, but it might just whatever. Anyway,
it might just go over people's heads.
There was a live stream that we did.
It was about 2 weeks ago.
A couple weeks ago. I'm trying to remember what we were talking about. It was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
I think it was the land one. I think it was the first one of this new series where we changed the format. We're doing it on YouTube. Man. We're doing it horizontal, the whole deal. I had made a really strong batch of chamomile tea, and I was sipping on it over the start of the live stream. And at 28 minutes into the live stream, you see the lights just shut off. Not as in I turn over looking in this direction and just completely space out. And then Isaac just carried the ship from the rest of that because I was just in a totally other world. But,
it's so funny. You're like, I found the time.
Yeah, I was editing it.
Afterwards, he had said that it hit him or whatever, and then after when he was editing it, you're like, this is what happened.
Yeah, by editing it, I mean I'm just clipping. I'm just trying to find the useful clips and clipping them out into. I don't change anything that we do. It's just making it a little more digestible for people. But anyway. Fun fact, kind of funny. Whole chamomile tea. It's awesome. It's good stuff.
More cows, less money invested in them. That's right.
Yep. The more cattle you can run. That's back to our density.
Yep.
Yeah. The more cattle, by properly grazing, using your stocking density as a tool to increase your stocking rate, you're going to be more profitable per acre because you can run more animals per acre than your neighbors. So, for example, the county average here is about 5 acres per animal unit, and we're down to 2.5, 3 acres per animal unit.
It's around 2.
Yeah.
370.
Yep.
And 721 or something? We calculated it out, the paddock size.
Yeah.
Which part of it is timber too. Some of those paddocks.
We could go to the grazing chart and I have the number right there, how many acres we've got, grazable acres in total.
And then you have the animal units too.
Yep. You could easily figure. I mean, I think it's on the chart. I think
no, it'd be more than 2 acres because it's 264.
I think it's like 2.5, 3. It's somewhere in there.
Yeah.
2 is like, so this is another discussion to get into, but like you can like the closer when you're getting around 2, it's this weird like magic zone where if you go too low, like if you're going. Like if you start to dip like below 2 acres per animal unit, weird stuff starts to happen. As in like you're playing with fire. Like your margin of error is so small when it comes to screwing up, because if your grazing isn't like perfectly lined out, like you're butting right up against being overstocked, and the only thing that's keeping you appropriately stocked is the fact that you're perfectly timing your rotation so that you're coming back around when the grass starts to kick. So like if something happens that you don't anticipate,
in the winter time.
in the winter or in a drought or like whatever, like if something comes around that you don't anticipate, like bad growing conditions or it's super wet, so you're not getting the most out of like certain areas of your farm or whatever. If you're pushed right up against that like maximum capacity at around 2 acres or whatever, like you have to be so on it, because you will overgraze your farm so quickly if you're right up against that. So like it's almost better to be like it's always better to run more animals, but you just have to be really on your game if you're butting right up against that 2 acres.
It's like a process. The longer you do it, the closer you'll get to 2 acres, and then you just keep increasing and then as you're increasing, your experience and knowledge in the subject is increasing and stuff too. So Ian's at like an acre per cow.
Yeah, I mean, when I was saying 2, I mean like for here.
Right.
It obviously like Arizona is going to be totally different from here.
Yeah.
Africa, South Africa is going to be totally different from here.
Ian thinks that Greg can get down to an acre per cow.
An acre per cow.
It's like it takes cattle to grow. It's like the chicken or the egg. Takes cows to go grow grass, but it takes grass to feed cattle.
Yeah.
Or to grow cattle.
So it's somewhere in that transition you're going to be feeding a ton of hay before
but then once you get the grass to where, So this kind of goes back to the whole stocking density, where like the bigger. So think of it this way: you could have 20 cows, and Greg has 370, and we're stocking. We're grazing them at 60,000 pounds per acre. Well, with your 20 animal units, 20 cows, at 20,000 animal units, let's say you want to get the same stocking density, 16,000 pounds. So you take those 20 cows and shrink them down to a third of an acre, and that's your move, every day or every day you're moving them a third of an acre to get the same stocking density that we're doing here. The difference is you've got a 20 horsepower engine and we've got a 370 horsepower engine.
Yep.
So
it's
the more cattle you have, the bigger engine you have, the quicker you're going to turn your grass around, the better you're going to do on the land. So even if your density is stocked the same, which I hate saying this because it's like telling people to buy more and like overstock their farm, but it's not that. It's like a balance kind of.
And obviously it's not. It's like it's not that simple. As in like you can't just it's totally context dependent, because you're not just going to be able to keep adding cattle and just grow more grass infinitely. Like you're going to reach a peak of your soil capacity, a peak of your environment or whatever, where like that is about as maxed out as far as plant density that you can get on a given acre. And like that's where you're going to top out at, like you're not going to really be able to run any more animals on that set like acreage. But it's something to think about, like you should always just be monitoring that kind of stuff.
Like you were saying, it's very location dependent.
Yep.
Like Arizona, you're never going to be able to get to
2 acres per
1 acre, let alone 5 acres per animal unit, probably.
Like if your county is stocked at like 250 acres per animal unit or whatever, like it would be unbelievable if you could get it down to 70, and that would be like crazy for here. Like if you just start talking about numbers, it's ridiculous. like on 70 acres you could run one. Let's just say on 70 acres you could run one cow or 5 sheep, right? And here on 70 acres, you could run like whatever 30 to 40 cows, 30 cows,
or
3 times 5, 150 ewes. Right? Yeah. 150 ewes, which is like as big as our sheep flock is. So like that's nuts, right? But that would be like a massive accomplishment if your stocking rate is 250 acres per animal unit or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's just all super context dependent. But that's the beauty of the whole thing.
Yep. If you can feed 3 smaller frame versus 2 big cows, you get 1 more calf for the 3 smaller cows. That's right. We have a lot of chamomile growing here. It's so much better. Whole flower, I agree.
Who's that?
Alder Pine Homestead.
Nice. Good stuff.
If you all had a choice between starting a herd with lowline or Aberdeen Angus heifers or Corriente heifers or the South Pole bull, which would you go with? You're saying between those 3?
I'll say this.
Lowline, Aberdeen Angus, or Corriente.
I would say like to breed with a South Pole. Is that what you're saying?
And then South Pole bull paired with that.
Paired with either of those 3.
One of those 3.
One of those 3.
I think.
I think it completely depends on your situation. You know, like Corrientes are going to really help you out if you're really dry.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have a lot
of forage.
Low lines are super efficient on grass, but you want to make sure you have a good market for the beef, because if you try to sell, even if you're selling coals, if you sell to the sale barn, you're not going to get any kind of profit from it. But if you've got the low lines and you've got this grass fed beef market and you can supply it and you can sell all your extra beef that you're raising. Why not? They're super efficient. The smaller the animal, it's the same way with the sheep. Why the sheep are way more efficient than the cattle per head, because it takes a lot less forage to raise them, and they're they calve a lot easier on just grass.
Or lamb.
No, I'm talking the low ones.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the sheep. I was like, the low ones, and then what was the other one? Aberdeen Angus.
Yeah, which I think it's just like a more heritage breed of Angus, like. Yeah. I think the Aberdeen is from Europe.
I would just I don't know anything about it, but I would make sure that it's not big. Yeah. And by big, I mean like mature weight of over 1,200
cow.
As a cow, you don't want. I mean, 1,200 would be the absolute max. You'd want it. It'd be nice if it could be 11,000. That'd be perfect. And a small frame South Pole bull, because that's the thing that people don't understand sometimes about South Poles is like. Greg's South Pole herd, like he is all about that small frame size on his bulls and his cows and whatever, but it's not like a trait of the South Pole breed in and of itself. Like there are some South Poles that are massive. Like I mean, maybe not as big as like an Angus or
2,000 pounds,
but like 2,000 pounds, big bulls, big mature bulls, and so it's like you just have to be careful as far as like any sort of. When you're getting into like any sort of like breeding or seed stock or whatever, like you should always be looking for moderate to small frame, max mature cow size of 1,200 pounds.
800 to 1,200 pounds is like
the
range
sweet spot
you want to be in.
If you get smaller than 800,
closer to 1,000 is ideal.
Yeah, if you get smaller to 800, then you run into the problems that you were talking about, where like if you better be selling like direct to market beef or like just selling grass fed beef, and that's your deal, because if you're trying to sell whatever to the sale barn to
even like
any
to
capacity,
breeding stock,
even for breeding stock, it's too small.
It's not a lot of people are sold on the fact that they're that efficient on grass. Like they are, and they're excellent animals, but as the majority people are not looking to buy them.
And like does it like you have to really do the analytics to figure out like, okay, the fact is its increase in efficiency on grass the fact that it matures at 600 pounds or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
just throw a number out. Yeah. But like matures at 600 pounds, like versus 1,000. Like, is that 400 pound difference? Like, is the efficiency make up for that 400-pound difference because you're going to get less meat per animal. You know what I mean? So like, can you actually run whatever that is, that 400 pounds? You have to do the math, like 600 to 1,000, like that. So that 40% reduction in carcass size, are you going to be able to run over 40% more animals? You see what I'm saying? Like 40% more animals on your farm.
Yeah.
To make up for that loss in like meat per acre that you're selling
of animals per animal
yeah,
pounds.
or if it's seed stock, like to be able to make up for that 40% loss in, or no, it wouldn't be gain. It'd be gain. But like, I guess yeah, it's like you just have to do the math to figure out.
Make sure it's
make sure like it's actually it actually is making sense economically to do that. But anyway,
as far as forage efficient, they are.
Yeah, but the original point though is like 800 to 1,200 is the range, and you don't want to go either. I mean, if you can get closer to that sweet spot of 1,000, like that's where you really want to be.
So that's what I would say. Low lines, if you've got all the grass-fed beef sold, if that's your market. With the Aberdeen Angus, make sure they're right there around 1,000 pounds. I mean,
I don't know anything about Aberdeen Angus.
If they're up more towards even like the higher end, like 1,200, and you find a small frame South Pole bull, you're going to be able to bring that down in a couple of generations.
Yeah, it will only take you
when you're talking
10,
14, 1,600 pound cows. I mean, now that's when you're talking a long time to get your herd size down to where you want to be. So, and then the Corrientes.
Yeah.
If you're in an arid climate,
or it's
hot, and there's not a lot of forage, and you kind of have to push your cattle, Corrientes are excellent cattle for that.
The thing to remember, that I'll say this is the last parting word for that question, is the closer you can buy to your idyllic animal, right? So in frame size, in like body composition, like the whole 9 yards in that regard, the closer you can buy to quality at the beginning, the faster you're going to be able to develop something that's super successful on your piece of land. The more work you have to do at reducing frame size, filling them out, putting weight on them, taking horns off, like that kind of stuff, the longer it's going to take. And 2-3 years per generation. If you're talking 3 generations, you're talking like almost 10 years of time, right? So like, just keep that in mind. Like if you have the money, like buying the best stuff that you possibly can from the beginning, you're going to save yourself so much time and headache. Mm-hmm. So something to think about. Anyway.
Fresher chamomile is stronger. Stuff chopped up and stored longer is weaker.
Yeah, look at that. We got a lot of tea friends out there.
My neighbors had dairy cows until a couple years ago. Milk truck twice a day and all that. They have the farm split only enough that they separate the heifers and dry from the milking cows. 2 pastures, one for the milking cows, one for.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah.
They're probably giving TMR, total mixed ration too. That's where most of their feed's coming from. So they're not necessarily relying probably on the pasture.
Yep. Supplemental feed. Yeah.
Dairy cattle,
not pure pasture.
They need a lot of.
Lactation is the most like demanding thing on any sort of mammal. Mm-hmm. Like it's more like physically demanding on the mother than the actual like gestation itself. Mm-hmm. The lactation is. Yeah. So that's why like
poor ladies.
That's why like you're saying, dairy cows, the nutrition requirements are through the roof for them to maintain condition.
They're not only producing milk, they're producing a ton of milk.
And they're bred to do that. So
they're bred for producing a lot of milk, so they need a lot of feed.
Yep.
A lot of nutrition.
That's why you see, if you're gonna see body condition slumps in your females, it's gonna be right around when their calf is just cranking on the milk, mm-hmm. Which is why you want to align your calving with like proper forage and nutrition, because if they can be at a high plane of nutrition when they're in that like most demanding part of their like lactation cycle,
they can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
They always would lose newborn calves to coyotes. Is this because the cows are spread out across the farm instead of in an actual herd?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Most likely. A coyote or any sort of predator is not going to want to mess with. It's like like dinosaurs used to do it. Like they hypothesized or whatever. Like all the triceratops would get in a big circle around like the young or whatnot. Bison do the same thing. It's
right, wolves and bison.
It's like that big group of animals. It's a lot more intimidating and hard for a predator to pick something off.
Like yaks will do it up in the frozen tundra. They'll all get
musk oxen.
They'll all get together and then they'll face outward and keep the young in the inside.
Yeah.
And if anything comes forward, you got 20 horns sticking you right in the jugular.
Yep. So more protection in the mob.
Ian is right. Greg could be working on getting to the most optimal grazing and make it to 1 acre per animal if he were working on beef cattle for food. But Greg is correct for his management style. I think Greg is the hesitations that he has. So March, which this March has been kind of an anomaly, but usually March is muddy. Greg calls it March Mud Month. And so for Greg, the thought of having 700 cattle as opposed to 370 in March just sounds like a wreck. And I think we're both kind of on the same page that it's a wreck. Greg has been growing his herd too, though. So
like we wintered more animals this winter than he ever has.
Yeah.
The 269 animal units is more than, or 65 is more than we've ever had or Greg's ever had in the winter. Usually he's down to 300 animals. And like not animal units, like head, usually down to like 300 head, and we have 379 that we wintered. So full 80 basically more. That's everything, by the way. It's not. That's why you want to be sort of thinking about animal units when you talk about that kind of stuff, because a bunch of those are calves and anyway.
Totally off topic, but how do the sheep do in trees? Have a friend that wants to graze in a Christmas tree farm. I think they'd eat the pine trees, like.
They nibble on the, especially the spring, if there's like tender new growth, I bet they'd nibble on the.
They don't touch cedars, but cedars, the only thing
really
that'll
high
eat
terpenes.
The only thing that'll eat cedar is a goat.
But they probably nibble on like the green leaves of the green
if they can
spring
reach
needles if they can reach it. But it also depends on what's underneath.
Yeah, if there's some really good forage, they're probably, I don't know, and maybe that's not a bad thing to just nibble on it. I don't know that they're gonna defoliate the whole trunk all the way up.
And they can't reach that high.
Maybe do something like stick them in on a couple trees that are not something you're gonna sell, like the reject trees. Stick them in there and see what they do. If they eat the leaf, or if they eat all the needles and they ruin the tree, then you probably don't want to graze them. But
if there's any kind of forage underneath, my intuition is like they won't really bother the trees.
My thing, what I think is like they might. Like you said, if there's forage under there, they might nibble on the trees just to get a little bit extra in their diet, but I don't think they're gonna
defoliate them.
Just absolutely strip them. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
You were talking pine trees, but like when we turn the sheep into a paddock, especially in the fall when there's a bunch of we have a crazy amount of oak trees here. It's insane. But if they'll go into the woods and start munching on acorns.
But they don't strip bark like a goat will. They don't, and like, actual trees, or, not on like deciduous trees as opposed, or deciduous as opposed to coniferous.
Yeah.
Coniferous, they'll nibble on the needles just because, low to the ground.
They'll also eat oak leaves sometimes too.
They'll eat the leaves off the tree, but they won't strip a bark. No. So if there's no leaves where they can reach, they're not going to hurt the tree.
Yeah, even cattle will eat like, especially like honey locust leaves.
Oh yeah, they'll eat oak leaves too. They'll eat
not as much as like a sheep or a goat, but
they'll eat, what is it that they really like?
The honey locust leaves. I've seen that a lot.
There's another one that they really like. I can't think of it. It's not hedge, it's there's one that they just crush. Maybe I'm thinking of honey locust.
It might be honey locust. The thing I can think of is them reaching up and eating the honey locust leaves.
They like no, not hickory.
Hackberry?
Hackberry, maybe.
No.
I don't know. There's one that I'm thinking of, but doesn't matter. They like leaves. Do you guys ever see a South Pole bull on a Dexter? No, but Greg was trying to get us to try it.
Get us to try it on our own operation someday.
Yeah.
And tell them about it.
You should get a Dexter cow and bring your South Pole bull to it. I'm curious to see it. I'm like, Greg, you do it.
Yeah.
You get a Dexter cow.
We've talked about it before, but so he knew somebody who did it with Charolais Dexter cross, and it worked. It brought the Charolais size down significantly. I don't know why the heck you would ever want to do that, but anyway.
Well, what happened is he bought these Dexter cows for cheap, like real cheap at the sale barn, and he had a really good easy calving Charolais bull, which was good genetics.
Yeah.
So when he bred it to him, those calves, they had, they're half Charolais. They looked a lot like Charolais, and so when he sold them,
they did a lot better.
Increased the calves were worth more than their mothers were, so therefore he made a profit on them.
Yeah.
That's why he did it.
Breeding up, that's what that's called.
Yep. And we've talked about that in a lot.
Yep. I think there's even a video on the Dexter deal. Like, there's a clip on YouTube of us discussing in detail that Dexter piece.
Mm-hmm.
So
look it up.
Look it up. If people really want to hear the spiel again, then let us know. But we're more than happy to get into it.
Green Wolf the Puppy says, I have heard of sheep being used in grapevines and under solar panels. That would be an interesting mix with Christmas trees. Yeah.
The solar panel thing, I think it was White Oak Pastures.
And
George
says sheep love pine needles. So
yeah, there you go.
I figured they would like them. Just because like the whole thing with vitamin C, I mean, it's good for them.
Yeah. What white pine tea. Eastern hemlock tea. Thuja canadensis. I'm not talking about like the hemlock that's related to carrot. I'm talking about like the pine tree. The hemlock related to carrot is toxic and will kill you. But the pine tree hemlock, Thuja canadensis, is super high in vitamin C. It kind of tastes sweet too. A little bit kind of like honey pine needles. But anyway, more tea talk.
I've heard of people using, kind of off topic, but on the same note of like, grazing animals in multi-level production.
Meaning?
Like, they were using goats in olive orchards or vineyard, whatever you call
olive orchards. Yeah.
And the goats would climb up in the olive trees and prune the olive trees.
Interesting.
For the farmer. I don't know if they were doing olives production or if it was like they had the goats and then they had the olive trees and they were just trying it and seeing what they'd get for themselves, or whether they're actually using it as a tool.
I think John Siskovich, right? You know what I'm talking about, like from Connecticut.
Yep.
I think
he's the one with the brewery, right?
Yeah, but I think so. Like they grow a lot. It's like a farm brewery, so they grow a lot of hops. Like their, I think he was using sheep in the hop yard because you need airflow in between the hop vines. So you usually you would trim the bottom like several feet of leaves or whatever in order to allow like better airflow in between them. And I think he just ran sheep in there and they trimmed up
all the leaves.
Trimmed up the leaves like a couple feet.
But they didn't take the vines probably.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, like
they just stripped the leaves.
Yeah, they stripped the leaves.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah. So anyway,
that's actually interesting. That'd be kind of cool because in that scenario.
Yeah.
It'd be exactly what you wanted to do: is strip as high as
they can reach. Yeah. Exactly. Huh. But anyway, I think he's made videos about it potentially. I don't know how successful or unsuccessful it was in the long term, but
yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Said I'm so curious about that cross. Yeah. I mean,
that kind of stuff gets us thinking too about like crossing stuff to try to produce an optimum animal for your environment. Like it's super interesting. You're not gonna be able to see the time. It's the temperature.
Oh.
What do we got? 8:30. That's about an hour. We're
just about there. We got a couple more questions.
All right. We'll hammer them out, and then I got to throw this bread in the oven.
Have to be careful with pines. Some contain more of the phenol oils that can cause abortions. So yeah.
We don't have any pine trees here really at all,
except for ones that are planted.
Yeah.
Greg planted some.
But they're not like in the pasture or anything like that.
There's some on jacks. Those great big ones.
Mm-hmm. Those are white.
That's
white
about
pines.
That's about all I think of.
Yeah, but those are planted.
Those were planted. Yeah. There's not anything that grows here on its own.
Yep. Not like home. We got tons of white pines.
White pine tea is good for mucus and phlegm. Oh duh.
Yeah.
Production. The first time I tried Buckley's, I couldn't smell anything, but gosh, it worked. When I got my smell back, Buckley's smells like tree urine. What?
What the heck?
I tried. What's Buckley's?
Buckley's. I have no idea.
Must be some kind of.
I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry. What kind of bread?
White. It must be kind of white pine tea.
Yeah, I'm talking about just going out and picking some needles off of a tree and steeping it. what kind of bread. The bread's like
It smells like tree.
The bread's it's a 100% sourdough, mostly it's like rye dominant, like rye whole wheat sort of like mix.
You got a piece of
No, this is a different one. That one's like mostly whole. That was mostly white flour. But it's a little more leaning in the direction of like a rye bread. It does really well with like smoked salmon and that kind of stuff. Super good.
It's a cough syrup.
Cough syrup. Okay.
Gotcha.
Make more sense now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I got my smell back, it smells like tree urine.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's funny.
That's it.
I think it's a wrap.
That was a good one, guys.
It was pretty much right on the ball.
Cranking on the questions. We just barely got caught up in time.
Yeah.
in our time.
I gotta throw the bread in the oven, so we'll sign off. Thanks for everybody tuning in. We'll be here next week, same time, same place. Chewing the Cud episode.
Ben Franklin made spruce beer.
Yeah.
Huh.
Interesting. All right. Thanks,
See you,
everybody.
Thank
See
you.
ya.